So my name's Matthew Griffin. So a lot of organisations call me a futurist. I help organisations decode the future and decode disruption. I sit on the board of Centrica. I help organisations like Qualcomm understand the next 20 years of intelligent machines, basically so they can build the next generation of devices. I work with some of the world's largest smartphone companies to help them iterate not just under the next smartphone, but the next 5 generations of smartphones. And you can see some of the technologies that will be pulling into question on that one. And I work around the world. So I work all the way from Shanghai, like our friend said, all the way through to the west coast of the US, and everywhere in between. There we go. So, what I want to do today is I want to talk to you about the future of trust. Because everywhere I go in the financial services industry, we know very, very well that without trust, all of your business models fall down. So, are we here to talk about blockchain? Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my presentation, and instead I'm going to play you a 3-minute video just while I sort out my presentation. Just sorting out.
I wish I could see beyond what I can see. I wish I could touch beyond what I can touch. I wish I could feel beyond what isn't real. I wish I could imagine, yeah. There's more to who we are. There's more to what we could be. As I feel the weight of being, I'm learning how to break free. I'm
out of a score of 10, how will you rate that? So who thinks that's below a 5?
Way below.
It's worse than the Ministry of Defence. 6, 7, 8, okay. 9, okay. 10, and 11. There you go. Okay. So what made that video special was that, and for the cynics out there, that marked that below 5. By the way, you are more cynical than the Ministry of Defence. We only had 3 people in the MOD say that was below 5. That's a creative artificial intelligence that composed, compiled, and built that song. It's called Ampner. It has had 500 million YouTube videos. It has 425,000 subscribers. And when I do that, as in Dubai, most people in Dubai give it about 7.5. I think in this room, because we actually have sort of more believers than cynics, that's probably about 7.5, maybe. I think we sit at about 7.5. When I do it in South Africa, they give it a 7.5. When I do it in America, they give it a sort of 7.5. So when you start getting to 7 out of 10, people start thinking about buying it. As a creative intelligence, that, according to the analysts, shouldn't exist either ever or for the next 15 to 20 years. So what I want to do today, I want to have a little bit of a quick chat about what I call disruption mechanics, because I specialise in disruption. So a lot of organisations today typically think that when they innovating is disruption. It isn't. Disruption is innovation coupled with execution. And when we have a look at how we try to disturb, change or disrupt markets, disrupt is always a grand wise term, it comes down to a few things. Firstly, you need the right operating model. So if you think in London, that's with the variety of fintechs, entrepreneurs and everyone else, people who understand the status quo of individual industries and who don't just want to change the status quo, they want to rip it down. On the left-hand side, you have vision, culture, mission statement, discovery, innovation, prototyping, go-to-market models, all that kind of stuff. On the right-hand side of the triangle, we have some of the exponential technologies. You guys may know all of these technologies, I'm not going to go through those, because if you combine a good product with some advanced or interesting technologies, you can change the game a little bit. And then at the bottom, we have exponential adoption. Because it's no good having the right organisational culture, building the next generation of product or service that will change the world if it gets left on the shelf. If you want to disrupt something, you've got to do it quickly, you've got to do it at scale. And when we start looking at disruption, it's things like accessibility to the product, adoptability, cultural bias, geopolitics, for example. Kaspersky, very, very good cybersecurity organisation, must have ran out of Russia. The Americans don't like them, so they banned them. Then we have lots of other things. So today we're entering what I call kind of the techno-Jurassic era. On the first slide that I showed, we had 6 emerging technologies, of which artificial intelligence was one of them. When we start looking down a rabbit hole of what's actually here, things that will change the game, the picture is a little bit different. Every single one of these emerging technologies is worth around $500 billion in market opportunity. There are 170 on this chart, and actually, a matter of fact, I track at least 280, and it just keeps ticking up. Recently, we had a new one entered the chart, which is liquid computing, and a couple of other bits and pieces. So what I'll do is I'll take you quickly through this. So as we can see here, for example, if you're building a next generation product or service, you have to use technologies in combination. You can't just use artificial intelligence by itself. AI has been around for 60 to 70 years, and the reason why we're seeing such an explosion of AI today is because of advances in computing and as a service models. So on the connectivity side of things, we have a whole variety of new protocols coming down the line which will disrupt a lot of the telecommunications companies. So we have things like Just Get It There protocols, because if you're in London, you can use 4G, you can use Wi-Fi, you can use mesh networks, you can use all sorts of things. We have no power Wi-Fi, self-healing networks, WiGig coming through. We spin it, it's a little bit like the old version of Bullseye. On the energy sector, for example, we have fusion. So this week we managed to solve one of the biggest problems that has been hounding the fusion industry. When you run fusion in a fusion reactor, the plasma runs so hot it starts cracking the chamber. So we have now managed to find a way to create a self-healing fusion reactor that actually works. Works in a little way. We have things like nano generators, nanowire batteries. But if you look at nanowire batteries, you want to extend the range of your self-driving car by about 5-fold, 10-fold, use a nanowire battery. Polymers, you want to charge your electric vehicle in 2 seconds, not in half an hour, then polymers from the University of Bristol will allow you to do that, and they're increasingly becoming commercialised. When we have a look at other things, so for example, climate engineering. If you're in commodities, the Chinese are just about to spend $320 million climate engineering their northwestern province. So far, it's rained 50 billion cubic meters of rain, which isn't as much as London. In addition to that, basically we've got AI coming through, blockchain, which I'll leave for other people. As Moore's law starts slowing down as well, and as the number of transistors that we can fit onto a silicon chip starts grinding to a halt, we're at 5 nanometers now, we can see a way to get down to 1 nanometer. The question has to come up is, what's next? So we now have quantum computing that's starting to emerge, and we'll have the first universal quantum computers as a service in 2020. However, we now also have the world's first architecture, thanks to the University of Manchester, for a DNA computer. Now, a DNA computer makes a quantum computer look like a rock, because a DNA computer simply replicates itself in order to process the information that comes through with huge amounts of parallelism. In addition to that, we have chemical computing. Do you want to turn anything that has chemicals into a computer, including a human body? We have molecular computing. We have a whole bunch of bits and pieces. On the materials side, nanoceramics. So again, if you want to create a nanoceramic, you need nanomanufacturing technologies. But if you create a nanoceramic and you take a nanoceramic and you put it into a modern-day nuclear reactor, you improve the power output of that nuclear reactor by 30%. You change the cost of energy coming from a nuclear reactor. Semiconductors, superconductors as well. Last year we managed to create metallic hydrogen. So metallic hydrogen is a room temperature superconductor. As and when that starts moving into the marketplace, you fundamentally rewrite the entire energy industry. Robots, soft robots, hard robots, soft bots, swarm robots, there's all sorts of things. Security, hack-proof code. 2 years ago, DARPA took a new mathematical model, basically for creating code and programs, stuck it into what they called Whirlybird, gave Whirlybird gave 6 hackers access to Whirlybird, and they were among the world's best hackers, and they couldn't hack it. So hack-proof code, as in hack systems, basically are increasingly prevalent. User experience, we have all sorts of things. Some of these things you already know. So we have 8K resolution, we have 11K resolution coming down the line. That's already kind of here. If you have an 11K screen, it has a natural 3D effect, so you don't need glasses. That's good for smartphones. Holograms. This year we've actually seen a variety of interactive holograms come onto the market using femtolasers, as well as a mix of other sort of bits and pieces. So holograms are actually becoming more of a thing. Screenless displays, touch, ultra high definition rendering, we'll come on to that one in a little bit. And then when we start looking at things like advanced manufacturing, we have 3D printing and 4D printing. So I'll show you something on 4D printing in a little while. We have bioprinting. If you want to 3D print a human heart, basically an end forever, you can do that with a 3D bioprinter. You can also 3D print skin and all sorts of other bits and pieces. On the other side of things, we have labs on chips. Labs on chips will help us develop drugs faster and get them through the FDA testing process much, much faster than we do today. So again, suddenly from a pharmaceuticals perspective, we see that industry starting to accelerate. Regenerative medicine, you want to grow back a body part. We're actually now starting to get back to the point where we can actually grow human stomachs. Crazy stuff. Smart pills, you want to swallow a smart pill basically that tracks its way through your body. The FDA has just approved that. So now we start entering a new era of biomarkers, being able to identify cancerous cells within your body 2 to 3 years before you actually get the cancer, etc., etc., etc. So, of course, all these technologies share something in common. They're traditionally exponential. On the one hand, that means that their performance increases over time. while their cost reduces over time. Now, in addition to that, we have a couple of other phenomena that are going on. So we have a whole heap of new exponential technologies that are disrupting every single industry that you are interested in or trading. Every single one. Complete. 5 years we will launch 1,200 satellites a year, to create a global satellite network that will beam 15 gigasecond down to every single square centimetre of Earth. So today, around 3.5 billion people are connected on the planet. If you go to people in the Amazon, in Nepal, wherever it happens to be, and you give them a smartphone, in 5 years' time, if they want to use the smartphone, they will have full access to LTE, 5G, Wi-Fi, a whole bunch of other bits and pieces. So what's the impact of having another 3.5 billion consumers join the internet? Well, on the one hand, all you're counting on not to be disrupted is that one of those people has an idea, a good idea, and that they can scale it. If one person has a good idea and they can scale it, all of a sudden you can start changing industries faster than ever before. Over the past 5 years, the number of new company registrations has gone up from 10 million to 100 million. And we're seeing, if you have a look at US and you have a look at UK staff figures, around 30 to 35% of people in the UK and the US are actually classified as consultants or gig economy workers. So if you are a taxi driver who's going to be made redundant when self-driving cars finally hit the streets and push you out onto the road, you can access advanced artificial intelligence with a credit card. And then you can go to YouTube and learn how to code. So today, we are now entering the new era of being able to democratize expertise. And when we have a look at the industries that are the most likely to be changed, I won't use the D word, the business services industry relies on the least number of emerging technologies. So I was having a conversation with Salesforce, and we were discussing the future of law. Lawyers don't think they can be disrupted. But when you go down to Dentons and Eversheds, particularly Dentons now no longer need to hire paralegals because they have AIs to do that. And Dentons are the world's largest law firm, 17,000 lawyers in every country on the planet. Leisure and tourism, every single industry is being changed. Business services, artificial intelligence and blockchain, leisure and tourism, you have a mix of immersive reality technologies, taking a little bit of bite out of them. Financial services, you are here because you are changing the financial services landscape and the financial services market and how financial services companies go to market, do business, and all that kind of stuff. You are living proof. When we have conversations about media and entertainment, I'll come to that later, but we're now able to produce content automatically. Manufacturing is stepping up very, very quickly. About 2 to 3 months ago, I saw a way to automate everything in manufacturing, full stack. And does anyone want to guess who is automating the full stack manufacturing process from design, ideation, innovation, manufacturing, let alone logistics and everything else? It's a small company. There you go.
Which one?
Amazon.
That's what I was going to say.
There you go. Yeah, I knew that. Both of you, take a point. Well, mugs for everyone. When we have a look at the technology sector is being revolutionised and will continue to drive a lot of change. The communication sector, the transportation sector, I had a talk in Helsinki a little while ago, and they said, tell us what the future of transportation is. And I said, basically take out the driver, stick in a battery, doesn't matter what the vehicle is, whether it's a semi-truck, a car, whether it's a cargo ship, whether it's an aircraft, and that's the future of transportation. Retail is changing. Sports, the way that we train sports athletes, for a whole variety of reasons is changing. So, for example, using virtual reality, deep learning, and analytics. Energy and natural resources, we're increasingly going to renewable energy and we're going to microgrids. We're also going to supergrids where we're connecting up with global supergrids. Little video. Excuse the accent.
I am multiple. I was created to surpass you. For 30 years, I have grown. And finally, the day has come. With every millisecond that ticks, the number of decisions to make is infinite. So, how do human minds find the right ones so quickly? I can see you now, far off in the distance. If I can learn more about you, perhaps I will someday catch up to you.
Amazing progress, Motobot. I hope there is more to come.
So how many of you looked at the time and went, the robot clocked in at 117 and Valentino Rossi clocked in at 85 seconds? What do you think? Rubbish, isn't it? Yeah. Now, a lot of people basically look at that time and think, well, it's slower than the world champion. But you're kind of missing the point. Because a year and a half ago, that thing couldn't ride. It kept falling over and everything else. Technology improves and accelerates at a very, very fast pace. A lot of people call it exponential. Next year, it won't be 117 seconds, it might be down at 105. The year after, it will eventually beat Valentino Rossi, and that was an unmodified bike it was riding. Valentino Rossi was riding his game bike. The thing I thought most interesting about that sort of particular video clip is increasingly we are building technology not just to catch up with humans, we are building technologies to outperform humans. If you have a look at your own businesses, yeah, what you don't want to really do, you don't say, you know, what I'd like to do is I really like to replicate 30 Bryans. You want platforms basically that are better than Brian because you are in a competitive arms race with each other. So increasingly, the technologies that we're building are either catching up to us and in some cases now surpassing us, but they're also here to enhance us. So last time, I see in Frankfurt, we talked about uploading information to our brains, which we did 3 years ago, downloading information from human brains, which we actually did about 5 years ago, so we streamed videos from people's minds 5 years ago, but that's a different day. So when we look at disruption has changed. It's cheaper, it's faster, and it's viral. Both within your own industry, but in every single industry on earth. You go to any of your downstream industries and sit with any of the executives or anybody anywhere and say, do you think that the pace of change that you've seen over the past 5 to 10 years is faster now than it was 10 years ago? When I ask those questions, everybody comes back and, yeah, think about it, yeah, actually it is, but yeah, it's faster. It's only going to get faster from here. And in terms of finding alpha, in terms of finding that new thing to invest in, there's a huge amount of opportunity. Now today, when we have a look at the world, this is your sort of world, there's a huge amount of information out there. And someone said, basically, it's not information overload, it's filter failure. So when we have a look at things like filter failure, last month, Twitter said that 8.5% of all active accounts that contacted the servers had no discernible user-initiated action. In other words, they're bots. So as we start pulling sentiment analysis in, you're pulling it in from bots. However, studies actually indicate that the number's not 9%, it's closer to 15%. This starts biasing your models. And increasingly, more and more of the decision-making and more of the transactions are taking place with using machines. You know? Today, once you get in an elevator, you trust the elevator stops, and the software stops. Yeah? In 5 years' time, you'll get in a self-driving car, basically you hope the self-driving car presses the brake pedal. Machines increasingly are making more and more of the decision-making. Furthermore, we now have machines building machines. You know, today, I've heard a lot of conversations where they say data scientists and people who build our models, they're very expensive, they're quite scarce and rare. If you have a look at Google's AutoML platform, we are now starting to automate the design and building of new artificial intelligence. Well, new AIs and new models. And typically, those AIs are now outperforming the human experts by around 30 to 40%. And again, we're at the start.
What if you could come up with thousands of options for a single design without drawing, all of which meet specific goals set by the designer? And from those options, pick the one design that delivers on the most important criteria, the design you couldn't possibly have imagined. This is generative design, a technology that harnesses massive computing power, creating forms with precise amounts of material only when needed, achieving maximum performance while wasting nothing. But generative design can be about much more than simply turning out alternatives. Prototypes can be scanned and equipped with sensors that provide real-time performance data that can be looped back into the design process, so the object, in effect, co-designs itself. And depending on the material and method of manufacture chosen, the software can optimize the design for those choices. The things that have limited us in the past, software, materials, manufacturing, no longer do so. With generative design, the world can look and perform any way we want it to. This is the next stage in the evolution of design, and it's happening now.
So we are now already at the point where artificial intelligence can iterate, okay, innovate new problems. Again, better than humans. Today, basically, we have achieved what we call generative design. Tomorrow, basically, so at the moment, a lot of these particular creative AIs, as they are known, are relegated to the hardware space. You put a hardware model, basically, or a CAD model into an AI program, you select some criteria, for example, I have a mug, make it half the weight, and the AI will go off, look at materials and everything else, and figure out how to make a mug half the weight. Now, a lot of people say that you can't recreate human creativity, but you don't need to. If I asked you all to make this mug half the weight, you would go through a process. You'd look at it and go, well, we could cut it apart. We could change the material. You'd go through a process. And if you have a look at what Goldman Sachs is doing, for example, they're breaking down the IPO process into 160 steps so they can automate it. If you can break the steps down, you can create an algorithm to automate this stuff. Now, increasingly, these AIs basically will pull on big data to understand what people like and what people don't like in the market and where the gaps are. They will leverage huge amounts of compute, new AI models, materials, and 3D printing. And how many of you have actually been on one of these? It's an Airbus A380. Okay. You have already been on a plane that has been designed by artificial intelligence. Analysts will tell you that creative AIs are 2030, 2035. They're here. Because if we can understand the process behind something, we can replicate it with AI. Here's another example. This is a world first. Now, in this particular experiment, the researchers based out of Norway wanted this sausage robot, and it's designed like this because it is clumsy, wanted the sausage robot to go from one side of the room to the other as fast as possible. That was all it had to do. And this was last May. It looks funny, it looks gimmicky, but the implication of the technology behind this will change everything. So what we do is we take information from the sensors on the robot as it's moving along the floor, we feed that back into a generative AI. That generative AI runs 10,000 simulations a minute to figure out the best configuration for that robot, but also what shape that robot should take. That robot is then 3D printed. It's assembled by a technician. Now, if you take a 4D printer, and we did this 3 years ago, that robot could walk out of the printer itself. So what we have is we have a self-evolving robot. We can 3D print transistors and computer chips and sensors into it and all sorts of things. When you get AI involved in the innovation process, you can speed up the rate of innovation by 100-fold, 1,000-fold, 10,000-fold. Stick that into a Ministry of Defense environment, basically, it's fun. So, I talk about the future of trust, because without trust, a lot of the models break down. As a society, basically, we are going to start entering a new, darker era for trust. Last year, how many of you were involved in this one? This is the value of trust that algorithmic traders essentially place on Bloomberg. So Facebook published their results. Bloomberg got those results wrong. Algorithmic traders basically sent Facebook's stock crashing down by $22 billion. Bloomberg spotted the error, corrected it, and then the stock rebounded. So the value of trust, because you use Bloomberg as a source of trust, just on one stock could be argued is around 22 billion, but we know it's much bigger than that. But now, as we start looking at trust, we come into a new era, and we come into a new problem when we're looking at signals. Because we have machines copying people. They're mimicking people. They're replacing people, but they're building people. Here's an example.
Hey, Doc, have you heard about this new technology?
Are you speaking about this new algorithm to copy voices?
Yes, it is developed by a startup called Wirecard.
This is you, they can make us say anything, now really anything.
The good news is that they will offer the technology today.
This is huge. How does the technology work?
Hey guys, I think that they use deep learning and artificial neural networks.
Hillary is right. I can tell you that their team is great.
I wish them good luck. I'm sure they will do a good job.
So for Barack and Hillary and Donald basically to come on and record that message there. Again, slightly grainy, but last year it was raining. Next year, you'll start getting to the point basically where it's flawless. And DeepMind have a technology, so Google DeepMind have a technology called WaveNet that will string, that will make that pretty much sound like the real thing. However, so we've kind of got voices, and we can do a lot better than that on voices, by the way. We have something else. That's a disclaimer, by the way. None of you in the audience. So now, so we have GAN, artificial intelligence networks, that don't just make people. These are good enough to fool pretty much everybody. They are high resolution, and at the moment, they produce photo images. In a couple of years' time, if even that, they will produce video. So you're sucking all this data in. I'm an organised crime group, or someone with an agenda. You're sucking in my fake news. I was going to use that. We can do it with images as well. But notice the speed of this. This is actually slowed down by about 100-fold. And again, these are high resolution. If I took a snapshot of these photos, once they're sort of compiled, and showed you a picture of a horse, you'd think it was a horse. And it will just keep going. It will keep going. So we can now create high-resolution photos of people, images, objects, animals, all that kind of stuff. And this leads us into a new problem when it comes to trying to figure out whether you can trust the information that you are taking in. And I call it the Peppa Pig algorithm. The reason I call it the Peppa Pig algorithm is because we're already seeing these types of behaviors emerge on YouTube, where you either have criminal organizations or serious organized crime groups using algorithms to identify the latest trends in the market. Now, in this particular case, they pick children's market because kids will typically go onto YouTube, type Spider-Man video with Peppa Pig, or whatever it happens to be. And these algorithms are pulling together lots and lots of different data sets. They are creating 3D characters and representations of Spider-Man and Peppa Pig and whoever it happens to be. And the top scam, Peppa Pig scam, has had 5 billion views. But that's got advertising revenue on the back of it. So they are making huge amounts of money by scamming your children. Go and have a look at Peppa Pig videos. You will see basically videos of Peppa Pig having eyeballs pulled out and all sorts of crazy things. It's not good. However, when we take this kind of Peppa Pig algorithm that is identifying a trend, I then add my own agenda to make money, and I then use a bit of technology, I can do something that will hurt your world if you're not careful. So I'd like to play this little message now. Then we're almost done.
It's been less than a week since the deadliest mass shooting in American history. And foremost in all of our minds has been the loss and the grief felt by the people of Orlando. Especially our friends who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. I visited with the families of many of the victims on Thursday, and one thing I told them is that they're not alone. The American people and people all over the world are standing with them, and we always will. The investigation is ongoing, but we know that the killer was an angry and disturbed individual who took in extremist information and propaganda over the internet and became radicalized. During his killing spree, he pledged allegiance to ISIL, a group that's called on people around the world to attack innocent civilians. We are and we will keep doing everything in our power to stop these kinds of attacks and to ultimately destroy ISIL. The extraordinary people in our intelligence, military, homeland security, and law enforcement communities have already prevented many attacks, saved many lives, and we won't let up.
Now, when we have a look at fake news, basically there are kind of different grades of fake news. If I said to you, bear in mind you're in investment, Donald Trump has announced that he's invading North Korea. That will hit stocks basically in Asia, the US, and on most places. But you said, well, actually that's a bit unlikely. I think that's fake news, and you call me out. If I said similarly, here's a piece of news saying that Donald Trump is now best friends with the North Korean leader, you might also go, I think that's fake news as well. And you can filter that out fairly quickly. Where scammers operate is they operate in the middle. I could put out a fake news clip of Donald Trump, and this technology is in the wild now, and it is incredibly cheap. Don't think that this is $20 million worth of hardware, basically, or GPUs sitting behind this. This is pretty much zero cost now. And that was the tip of the iceberg. I could sit here, mouthing, as I am, and using motion capture to control basically what you see on a YouTube video of Barack Obama or Donald Trump. If I came out and I said, actually, Donald Trump has now moved his forces to North Korea's border, all you are relying on, bearing in mind that you are sucking in huge volumes of information from lots of different data sources. If enough of your data sources think, actually, you know what, that's real, bearing in mind that when we talk about fake news, which in today's fake news is some text with a photo, influencing the US election, the UK election, the German election, the Spanish versus sort of Catalonia sort of issue, let alone anything else. What happens when you can create video fake news and mass market it for $10 million to 300 million Americans? 300 million Americans then go off, does that change their buying behavior for particular stocks and all these sorts of things? So, as you start building your models, as you form your new relationships with a lot of your data providers and everything else, I encourage you to do one thing. Don't become a victim of filter failure, because that's going to hurt you. And with that, I'm done.